In this video, I'm going to show you how to optimize the results for image tracing in Adobe Illustrator. But in order to do that, I'm actually going to use Photoshop and manipulate the photo and edit the photo in a couple different ways to do that. So if you don't have Photoshop already showing up on your dock, you can always do a quick search for it and start it right there. And it'll take a moment for it to load. And once Photoshop is going, I'm going to actually go to File, and you have several different options for opening images in Photoshop. I'm going to use Open as Smart Objects, and I have this on my iPhone originally. I've saved the image I'm going to use elsewhere, but I'm actually going to just go straight to my iPhone and open it up from there, because most of you will be working directly from your phone. So you just need to kind of navigate your way to saved photo. It might take a little while depending on how many images you have on there. And let's see if we can find that. Here we go. So I click on the file and then click open. And in Photoshop, I have the image opened, and by default, when you open an image in Illustrator, usually the crop tool will be active. So over here is my toolbar. This is similar to what you'll see in Illustrator, and the crop is active. And let's just move this over a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and crop this image a bit because I don't really need the surrounding area. So you just go right to the edge, click and drag, bring the crop box in a little to crop the image. And then once you're finished, you can hit enter, and just make sure that you have the box up here where it says delete cropped pixels. Make sure that's unchecked. And I'm just going to hit the enter key. So I've successfully cropped the image. From here, I want to do a few adjustments. So the first thing I want to do is use a filter, and I want to come down and use the sharpening filter. The specific one I'm using is Unsharp Mask. It's about, in my opinion, it's about the best sharpening tool or sharpening filter in Photoshop. So you click Unsharp Mask, and the settings that I typically use are about 30% and with a radius of about 17 pixels. But you can always adjust this to see what happens. So as you bring that over to the extreme, you can see that's not really what I want. And you can see what happens when you adjust the threshold or in the radius. I usually don't mess with the threshold. Maybe about 15%, and I definitely want to bring this down from 500% to about maybe 30%. But you know, there's no set number here depending on the photo you take and how well your camera works. You may have to adjust this more or less. So about 30% for the amount, and then the radius, you know, anywhere from 10 to 15 pixels. But you can kind of get a little bit of a preview here in the Unsharp Mask filter panel. And then once you're happy with that, you click OK, and that looks pretty good. So we want to sharpen the image, and then we also want to convert this to black and white. Even though the image is black and white, there's a little bit of color cast to the image, so I want to get rid of that entirely. And I'm going to go to black and white for my adjustment layer. So down here on the layers panel, you have several different options and icons for different functions that Photoshop will create for you. So underneath this, on that one, I'm going to click. These are adjustment layers. You could do a fill layer or adjustment layer, but what I want is the black and white adjustments layer. I'm just going to click that, and that kind of whitens up the lighter areas and darkens in some of the darker areas. Luckily, I have this, and it's pretty much a black and white image. But I want to just make sure it's fully black and white, converted completely to black and white. And then I'm also going to adjust the contrast. So the next adjustment layer would be brightness and contrast. You click, and I'm not really going to need to mess with the brightness. If I do, I could, but I probably won't really need to do that too much. I definitely don't want to darken it. But maybe a little brightening wouldn't hurt, depending on the image you have. And then I'm going to max out the contrast. I really want this to be a high contrast image. And then the beauty of using adjustment layers, if I turn these off, the layer panel over here is very similar to Illustrator. With the little icon there with the eyeball, you can turn on these adjustment layers on and off. Completely editable, not a permanent edit. Same with this filter. Since I created a smart object down here, I have what's called a smart filter, so I can take off that sharpening if I wanted to. But I'm going to leave it. And then from here, I'm not really going to manipulate the image much else than this, or much more than this. I'm just going to go to File. I'm going to save this as a JPEG image. Unlike Illustrator, you do not need to export a JPEG. And by default, you should have the save type as Photoshop.psd. That's the Photoshop default format. But I just want to save this as a JPEG, regular old JPEG right there. And then I want to pay attention to where I'm sending it. I'm actually saving this on a portable hard drive. So I'm just navigating my way there. We'll save it right here and click Save. Now, as far as the options on the JPEG options, make sure you're going with maximum quality. Bump this up. I usually will go down for format options and click progressive 5 scans. So you do want to save a high quality image. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I might as well save this as a Photoshop file as well. And I already have a similar file saved from previously. We'll save that as a different name. Click maximize capability, just click OK. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and minimize Photoshop. And basically, in the next video, I'm going to show you how to use the image trace tool in Illustrator to convert that photograph into a vector object.